Substitute amendment to offer?
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Ms. Bonamici of Oregon.
Pursuant to House Resolution 241, the gentlewoman from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Oregon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise today to urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support my amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 5. My amendment in the nature of a substitute is a common sense piece of legislation that makes tangible investments in parental involvement and enhances the ability of school districts to involve all families, not just the privileged few. By adopting this amendment in the nature of a substitute, we will invest in evidence-based, full-service community schools, public schools that coordinate closely with community organizations to improve the integration, accessibility, and effectiveness of services for students and families, to provide families with access to critical wraparound services, and, importantly, improve student achievement. We will be able to hire dedicated parent coordinators in public schools to work directly with parents, connect them with the resources and support they need to help their children succeed and ultimately improve parental involvement and student success. We will direct more investments toward the Department of Education's statewide Family Engagement Centers program, so states can share best practices on parental engagement and school districts can receive the support and training they need to increase parental participation and involvement. And colleagues, when I was a very involved parent, I talked to parents who wanted to come to school. They wanted to participate. They were working extra shifts or they didn't speak the, English. They didn't have transportation. Let's break down those barriers. And importantly, we'll prohibit the banning of books and curriculum in our public schools and restore the ability of students to receive historically accurate, well-rounded education. Madam Chair and colleagues, I worked on this substitute with the input of stakeholders who are in our public schools each and every day, who are parents themselves and who represent diverse communities and red and blue states across our nation. I'm proud to introduce this amendment in the nature of a substitute for consideration on the House floor because, unlike the bill it seeks to amend, it reflects the true diversity of our nation and embodies the approach we should be taking to make lasting improvements to public education, an inclusive, collaborative, and evidence-based approach. So on behalf of all students and parents, I encourage all of my colleagues to vote for this amendment and soundly reject H.R. 5, a bill that should be named the Politics Over Parents Act. And Madam Chair, before I yield back or reserve the balance of my time, I want to thank the staff on the Education and Workforce Committee for all of their help with this amendment in the nature of a substitute, and also my own staff in my office, Sujith Chair-Camilli and Dr. Alfonso Garcia, both of whom have spent time as classroom teachers. So I want to acknowledge the work of the staff on this important work as well, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise to claim time in opposition to the amendment.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield myself such time. While I appreciate the substitute put forward by the Congresswoman, the Democratic proposal is wholly inadequate and will do little to solve the problem that parents face. Instead, the Democrats' amendment resorts to a tired, old Democrat strategy. Spend more money, hire more people, and hope for the best. Madam Chair, parents need more than that. They don't need massive new amounts of taxpayer spending at the federal level controlled by bureaucrats when our country is already deeply in debt. Nor do parents need schools to hire massive numbers of new administrators. What parents need is for their rights to be protected. The Democrat substitute does nothing to ensure that parents are the ultimate decision makers in their child's education. Of course, that shouldn't be a surprise. There's been a push to silence parents around the country. Powerful teachers unions, several school boards, Democrat politicians, and the Biden Justice Department have all voiced opposition to the rights of parents to have a say in their child's education. This kind of rhetoric and political posturing have real-world consequences for parents. For example, in 2021, Rhode Island mother of two, Nicole Solis, talked to an elementary school principal in South Kingston, Rhode Island, about what was being taught in schools. After persistent stonewalling, the school district directed her to file a public records request. She did, and the local teachers union filed a lawsuit against her. This kind of treatment is outrageous. Ms. Solis was subjected to endless stonewalling, public humiliation, and an interminable and costly legal battle. No parent should have to go through that. The Democrat substitute would do nothing to ensure that stories like this never happen again, but the Parents' Bill of Rights would. Our bill will ensure that parents can never be sued for wanting to know their child's curriculum. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona recently published an op-ed about the Democrat vision for parent empowerment. In his vision, parents should be satisfied when the federal government spends taxpayer dollars on top-down solutions. By contrast, Republicans want an authentic give and take between parents and the education system about what students learn, how they are taught, and how they should be protected. That's why I'm proud to stand behind our bill. I urge my colleagues to vote against the Democrat substitute and in favor of the Parents' Bill of Rights. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves, and the gentlewoman from Oregon is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just in response, again, I want to reiterate that every single Democrat on our side of the aisle, we absolutely support parental involvement and parental engagement. And we talked about that in the debate on the bill. And talk about cost. It's my understanding that the so-called Parents' Bill of Rights doesn't have any additional funding with all of the extra obligations that are put on our schools and our districts and our teachers. And there is no effort to silence parents. We want parents to be involved peacefully and peacefully state their concerns. Absolutely. And I know the ranking member Scott talked about how Democrats tried to put an amendment in to put some reasonableness in there. If you have 200 parents show up at a school board meeting and each one of them wants to speak for 2 hours, that is not reasonable. So we absolutely support parental involvement. We want to do that. We want to provide that evidence-based engagement, and again, make the relationship collaborative, not adversarial. And that's why I encourage colleagues to support this collaborative, evidence-based approach to involve all parents in education, and I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves, and the gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I want to say again that the approach our colleagues want to take is to spend more money. Ms. Solis, that I mentioned earlier, Mr. Smith, who was mentioned earlier, and others, they certainly did not have the right to peacefully speak to their school boards and get responses. So that is not going to happen under the Democrats' amendment. We also are not mean, and again, we do not ban books. We do not condone the banning of books. So we think, again, that the substitute presents the perfect picture of Republicans and Democrats' approaches to parent engagement. Democrats believe protecting parents' rights means spending more taxpayer dollars to impose a top-down vision. Republicans believe in giving parents real power to secure the best education possible for their children. And with that, I will reserve, as I believe I have the right to close.
The gentlewoman reserves, and the gentlewoman from Oregon is recognized.
I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields, and the gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say again, our bill is meant to give parents their God-given rights to be involved with their children's education and to seek the best education possible. We do not want anyone to be treated unfairly. We want everyone to be treated fairly. We do not ban books. I urge the public to read this bill. It's fairly short, about 30 pages, to make sure where the truth lies in terms of this piece of legislation. I reject the amendment that has been offered in the nature of a substitute. I urge a no vote on the amendment and a yes vote on H.R. 5, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman